Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, we have as our guest Danielle Roberts. Danielle is a Medicare expert and co-founder of the award-winning Medicare insurance agency, Boomer Benefits. What a great name, Boomer Benefits. She and her team help our nation's baby boomers navigate their entry into Medicare and assist beneficiaries with their policies once you've enrolled. And we're having her on today because it's very important to know a lot of the details before you dive into the whole Medicare scenario. And since I'm way up there in years and been involved in Medicare for a long time, I'm really happy to bring this information to our listening audience. So thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle.
My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Now, share with our audience, why do you focus on Medicare as your expertise?
Well, when I started my agency back in 2005, I was helping individuals and groups. And a lot of times I would have entrepreneurs in their 40s who would ask me whether I could help their parents. So often when someone is aging into Medicare and it's confusing, they may consult with their adult children, and those adult children were asking me questions about, hey, do you know anything on Medicare for my mom or my dad? This stuff is really confusing. So I looked into it, and sure enough, it's a national beast, actually, of a healthcare program with 4 parts and 10 supplements and thousands of drug plan options. So we could sort of see the opportunity with 10,000 boomers aging in every day that there were going to be a lot of people out there that needed help. And we set out to become experts in Medicare, and slowly over the years, our business has transitioned to where we no longer do any of the group or individual products, and we just help people with Medicare.
Well, I think it's really useful because I can tell you when I got to that point, which is now many years ago, it's a double-edged sword because for one thing, I think for the cost of what you pay for the monthly premium, Medicare is a bargain next to other health insurance options when you're younger.
It really is, and a lot of times we have people who come in to meet us and they're 64, maybe they are on an individual health plan that's costing them $1,200 a month and they've got a $6,000 deductible. So Medicare is really a breath of fresh air when you pay a significantly lower premium, you have much lower deductibles as well. It's really great coverage. There's nothing about it to fear, so I love participating in conversations like this one where we can enlighten people and maybe help them look forward to Medicare instead of fearing it.
However, it is confusing. And also some people have the misconception that once they are, everything is covered like 100%, no matter what you want to do. And that's not it either.
No, it really isn't. That's a very common misconception because, of course, we pay taxes. All of our working lives just comes out of our paychecks, and we assume that that's going to pay for Medicare someday. So it can be quite a shock when you turn 65 and you're getting ready to head into your retirement and your golden years if you weren't prepared for the fact that you will have premiums to pay, and there are also things like deductibles and copays, just like your current insurance have. That can be a little bit of a rude awakening. So we want to educate the public whenever possible to let them know that there are going to be some costs associated with this healthcare when they get to that age.
So, I do want to share with you, Danielle, that although we're just about to get to one of those open enrollment periods, which we'll discuss, I don't want to focus on the dates because perhaps we'll use this show in the future, right? But it just so happens that there are specific enrollment times when people can enroll in Medicare, especially for the first time as they move towards that 65.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone gets a 7-month initial enrollment period that begins 3 months before your 65th birthday, and it runs through that month of your birthday and then goes for 3 months after. And that's the time when you need to sign up for Medicare. If you don't have any other coverage, you want to sign up for both parts of Original Medicare, Parts A and B. If you happen to still be working, which a lot of us do these days, working past age 65, and today's world, we have lots of opportunities for that. It's something that you can still enroll in Part A, since you don't pay anything for Part A if you've been paying taxes during your working life. And you can delay the other parts that have premiums so that you're not double paying for coverage. So if you're planning to retire at 68 or 70, that's totally okay.
Okay, so you brought up something, Danielle, and I want to remind our listeners that our guest is Danielle Roberts, and she is an expert in Medicare. And what is the best place for people to find you beyond our show today if they have more questions, Danielle?
Sure. It's very easy to find us online. We are just at boomerbenefits.com. You can also find us on all of your social media. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook group where you can come and ask Medicare questions. So just look for Boomer Benefits.
That's a great name. Now, you already threw out something that, I know what that is because I'm doing it. But what do you mean by A and B? Let's start there.
Of course. So Medicare, the original Medicare, has two parts. It's the same two parts that have been around since 1965. Part A is your hospital coverage. We like to call this room and board in the hospital. It's going to pay for a semi-private room where you are an inpatient. Whenever you're admitted as an inpatient, that's where you get your care. We'll also pay for the normal things that come with a hospital stay, like doctors and nurses that come in to check on you and 3 square meals a day. If you need to go to a skilled nursing facility after you leave the hospital because you're still recovering, Medicare covers that under Part A, and hospice is also covered under Part A. So that's the first part. And then the second part is called Part B. That's your outpatient medical. And it covers pretty much everything else from ordinary doctor's visits, lab work, all the way up to expensive things like chemotherapy and dialysis and, diagnostic scans, those kind of things. So anything that happens on an outpatient basis that's not part of a inpatient hospital stay will fall under Part B.
So that's where people get really confused, because now I'm going to bring up something that I know you have the answer to, and everyone I know gets confused about this. What is the difference between keeping plain Medicare and adding in a supplement versus going with something called a plan? And maybe I have those terms wrong.
You're pretty close. So when you enroll in Original Medicare, you have access to all of the providers that accept Medicare across the nation, and you can fill in the gaps in that Medicare with what is called a Medicare supplement or a Medigap plan. I mentioned earlier that there's things that you pay when you're on Medicare, like deductibles and copays when you use your benefits. Medicare covers approximately 80% of your health care costs, and so people want something to cover that other 20% so that they're not worried every time they have a health care service about what they're going to be shelling out of their bank accounts. So when you enroll in a Medicare supplement, that does exactly what it sounds like it does. It supplements those parts that are not covered and pays them for you. When you purchase a traditional Medicare supplement, you can use all of those Medicare providers nationwide. So it gives you the most freedom of access. You don't have to be in a network. You don't have to pick a primary care provider. You don't have to get a referral when you want to see a specialist. And you can use that coverage at over 800,000 providers in the nation. So it's great for people who travel or snowbird. And these plans do not include drug coverage. Medicare Part D is what covers the drug coverage. So you add on a standalone Part D plan to go alongside that. That's one route that you can go with your Medicare benefits. The other route is a newer option that was rolled out around the year 2000. It's called Medicare Advantage Plan. And these plans are when you are opting to get your Medicare benefits from a private insurance company instead of Original Medicare. So when you join a plan, these typically do have networks. So you're going to have a smaller, more local network of providers. You'll have lower premiums because you're agreeing to use those providers instead of having the bigger freedom of access across the nation. And you will pay copays for things as you go along. So that's how that works.
Right. And so after looking at those, when I started to talk about that, and you even said, oh, the plans are newer, but you're talking about almost 20 years old now, so they're not exactly brand new. But for me, because of what you said, I travel. I lecture all over the country. Any day I might be anywhere, who knows where. And I live also in Florida as well as in New York. So for me, that it was way better to have full Medicare that allows me to access providers anywhere. But as you snuck in, a new word here was Part D. So Part D means another bill, because then I have to pay separately for drug coverage. And I want to tell you, I've been paying for that now many, many years, every month, and have never once used it, because I don't use drugs. For me, they're only like an emergency kind of thing. So, it was confusing and terrible to have to commit to that. But if I didn't, the fee goes up like every month. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah, when they created the program, they had to determine whether they were going to adjust the original
tell us now,
Medicare.
it's Part D we're going to talk about, right?
That's right. So Part D was created and rolled out in 2006, and rather than incorporating it into the way that A and B already worked, they just tacked it on as a separate part of Medicare. And technically, it's, you mentioned, if you don't enroll in Part D and you don't have other creditable coverage, like from an employer plan, or maybe you have benefits through the VA, if you don't have creditable coverage, you will be assessed a penalty if you enroll late. So for every month that you wait to enroll in Part D, they will add a 1% penalty, and that accumulates. So waiting 5 years could mean that when you later join Part D, you could pay a 60% higher premium for the rest of your life. And this is a bit of a quandary for people like yourself who don't use medications, because you want the insurance coverage if you have it in case of something serious. You don't want to not be able to purchase something like an oral chemotherapy medication or their expensive diabetes medications. You want to have that coverage, but at the same time, if you're not someone that takes a lot of medications, you also don't want to have to spend a whole lot on it. That is actually one of the reasons why sometimes people opt for Medicare Advantage plans, because those plans can incorporate Part D. They have a Part D plan rolled into some of them. So sometimes people like that option for not having to pay extra for a Part D plan. They can get it included in the Medicare Advantage. So as you can see, there's lots of decisions to be made, and you need to carefully review all of the options so that you pick the one that best matches your needs and your lifestyle and also your budget.
It is so confusing. I think our listeners already know, which is why you may want to speak to someone like Boomer Benefits, our guest today, Danielle Roberts, who's explaining and deeply understands all these variables, because this is where the shock hit me. I sat down with my dad, who is 94, and opted to never get that drug plan. And we sat down. Do you know how many months? Do you know how many months he has Medicare since he's 65? That's a lot of months. We're talking months. And for every month, you get a penalty on what you would have to pay to join at the other point in time. So when I looked at that with him, that's what kind of told me I better join, back when I was 65, which is many years ago, because it's actually per month. That's an amazing thing. I don't believe they can legally do that.
Yeah, a lot of people wonder about that. They want to be able to buy the drug coverage when they need it. Why do they have to buy it ahead of time? And it's all part of how they fund the plans. They need to have people paying into it who don't use a lot of drugs to help benefit the ones that do use a lot of drugs. And so you need to sometimes look at the numbers. Often what you can do in most states, there are a few plans that are inexpensive. You can find plans that are $10 or $15 a month. So those are the ones we recommend often to someone that doesn't have a lot of medications or is only buying it to avoid the penalty, because you will have an opportunity every year in the fall during the annual election period to change that plan. So if you start off with an inexpensive plan just to avoid the penalty and have some coverage if you need it, later if you do add some medications and you need to have a different plan that has better coverage for those meds, during the annual election period each fall, you can make a change to a different drug plan that will start then in January.
Well, you know what? I'm going to talk to you about that personally. But we're going to take a break here right now, listeners. And I want to remind you that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
90.3 WHPC reminds you that people are always talking about the stock market, always looking to invest in a good opportunity, something with the potential to grow. So what if you can invest in the future of kids, like a stock? Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures from UNCF. Your investment can help students go to college, which ends up making the future better for everybody. Visit uncf.org/invest. A mind is a terrible thing to waste, but a wonderful thing to invest in. A message from UNCF, the Ad Council, and the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
You love them enough to do anything for them.
Dad, can we make 200 cookies for my bake sale tomorrow?
Let's do this. Including checking nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to more right here on Herbally Yours. Thank you so much for joining us on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse at naturalnurse.com. And today our guest is Danielle Kunkle Roberts, and she is a Medicare expert and co-founder of the award-winning Medicare insurance agency, Boomer Benefits. And she's explaining to us all the complicated ins and outs. And I do suggest if anyone is facing that time in life that they do speak to a professional because it is confusing. And you know, that happened to my husband, Danielle. He was the first one to hit that age, back several years ago. And we didn't know. And we signed him up for an Advantage plan, which seemed like the best deal in terms of monthly fee. But then when he went to use it, he could no longer use the doctor he had always gone to. And we were in total shock about that.
Yeah, that happens to many people because when you're looking at the options, you don't know all the ins and outs. And the Advantage plans can appear wonderful on the surface because the premiums are low. You pay for things that you use as you go along. But it's super important to check the plan's directory, knowing that these plans work as local and smaller. You need to find out ahead of time if your doctor is in the plan's network that you're considering. And if that plan includes medications, if it has the Part D rolled in, you also need to check if that plan is currently listing the drugs that you take on its drug formulary. You don't want to get into a plan and then go in January to fill an expensive medication and find out, the plan looked really good, but hey, that particular medication isn't covered.
Right. And since he also has never once used one, like that whole medication thing for us is just kind of seems like a waste of money, but it's hedging your bets like all insurance is about. So what we both did eventually was we got back into straight Medicare, which we love because we can choose any physician, including more naturally oriented physicians, which I'm going to bring up in a few minutes. But in terms of Part D, my husband opted to not get any. Good luck to him once those months add up. But I opted to get a drug plan. But also, we both have something called a Plan F, which is a supplement. And what that seems to do is, God forbid, if we did have to go in the hospital for some kind of thing, and you know how that racks up maybe $100,000 or something, we have a supplement that kicks in after $2,500. So that's kind of our out-of-pocket risk cap. And explain that. And also, I heard that Plan F is going away.
Yeah, so with Medigap plans, there's 10 plans that you can choose from, and Plan F has two versions. One is the version that covers literally every gap in Medicare that exists, so that when you have that card in your pocket, you literally will pay nothing for any of your care. No deductibles, no co-pays. You can go to the doctor, pay nothing, go to the hospital, pay nothing, have knee surgery, pay nothing. It's the most comprehensive plan available. And then there's a high deductible option of Plan F with a $2,300 deductible, which sounds like the one that you're on.
That is what I have. You're right. Yes.
Okay, good. So I have that same plan for my father. And on that plan, you will pay out of pocket up to $2,300 per person on your own policy. And then after that, it functions exactly like Plan F. So it's similar to, we have high deductible plans for people under 65 that come with HSA accounts where you have a lower premium because you choose a higher deductible. The Plan F high deductible works just like that. Now, Congress came up with the notion that if people could buy a Plan F where everything is covered, they're more likely to run to the doctor for every little thing and therefore cost Medicare more money. So they passed some legislation a few years ago that is taking away Plan F so that no one that is new to Medicare on or after January 1st of 2020 can purchase a Plan F anymore. They don't want you to have the option for coverage that covers that deductible right up front. So that sounds awful and maybe scary if it sounded like the Plan F is really good for you, but really there's still very good options. So the next most comprehensive plan is Plan G, and this one works just like Plan F except for you pay your own Part B deductible, which currently is $185 per year. So you go to your first doctor visit of the year, you're going to spend $185 for services. And then after that point, you have a plan that will function just like Plan F the rest of the year. So there's still good options. It's just there won't be one for new enrollees that covers absolutely everything anymore.
So what about the Plan F high deductible? That's what I have, and no one has told me I can't continue with it.
You will be able to keep that, and because you turned 65 and were eligible for Medicare prior to January 1 of 2020, you will always be able to buy Plan F or high deductible F as long as insurance companies still sell those plans. People who are eligible for Medicare before January 1st will always be able to get them. It's only the new enrollees who won't have access to them anymore, and they'll replace that high deductible F option with a high deductible G option. So if you like that idea of the high deductible, someone that's turning 65 on or after January 1 would be able to buy a high deductible Plan G.
Well, it is confusing. So you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my guest today is Danielle Roberts, and she's from boomerbenefits.com, and she's explaining to us very clearly, and if you're not getting all of this, have a conversation with Danielle, because let me tell you, it is confusing, and you do want to know before you go, because there's so many little pitfalls. And one thing I really want to bring up, Danielle, because our listeners are always interested in natural medicine, and I want to talk about what kind of coverage there is within Medicare. And by the way, I use my chiropractor all the time preventatively, and that's natural, and that is covered, although many other natural things may not be covered. Are vitamins ever covered in those drug plans, or is that separate than Medicare? And what other kind of natural things might be included?
Yeah, so vitamins and minerals typically are not covered by Medicare or Part D. So those are things that you would pay out of pocket, any types of supplements that a natural doctor might refer. If it's not an FDA-approved medication, then those are things that typically chiropractors, as you mentioned, are covered. The things that Medicare will cover is your adjustments, or it's called subluxation of the spine. But what they won't cover at the chiropractor's office is things like x-rays. So if you know going in, there might be some costs up front if you're setting up with a new chiropractor for some of the x-rays or any lab work that may be done. But the adjustments going forward, as long as that provider accepts Medicare, then you'll be able to have those covered without any problems. It's unfortunate that Medicare still hasn't sort of come to the 21st century on natural medicine. We often find that holistic or naturopaths are not doctors that are accepting Medicare. Typically, the ones that are registered with Medicare are going to be your DO or MD doctors. And we hope that will change going forward. So you just have to be aware of it going in, that may be something that you will have to pay out of pocket for. If you are enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan, Advantage plans can sometimes incorporate benefits for things that original Medicare doesn't. So occasionally you'll find an Advantage plan that might cover acupuncture, which would be one other option, but there'll be some limits on that. There may be only so many visits per year. So you just have to look at the individual plans if that's something you're interested in and see whether it would be worth it to enroll in a plan like that just to have that one benefit.
But also I noticed, Danielle, on some of the Advantage plans that they have sort of a monthly amount you're allowed to order over the counter, from one of the well-known, drug companies, corner drugstores, and those include vitamins.
Yes, that's right. So if you find an Advantage plan that has some extra benefits, we call them ancillary built in. One of those things can be an over-the-counter catalog from which you can order a certain amount, and it's usually based on per quarter. So maybe you have $50 that the plan gives you per quarter to spend on those things, and that will often include lots of over-the-counter things that you might normally be able to find at a Walgreens or a CVS. You can buy through your over-the-counter benefit. Now, not all Medicare Advantage plans have those, but you'll find quite a few that offer things like that, and they also sometimes incorporate things like dental, vision, and hearing, or even gym memberships. These are things that they can offer inside of a Medicare Advantage plan that original Medicare does not offer. Keep in mind that Advantage plans change their benefits every year. Unlike Medigap plans, which always remain the same, Advantage plans redo their benefits every year when they contract with CMS. So you might have something that you really like in your Advantage plan this year that could change the following year. So we always tell people never join your Medicare Advantage plan for the ancillary benefits. Make sure the most important boxes are checked off, that your doctor is in the network, that your medications are covered. Then if the plan has some extra things and you like those things, maybe that's an option that you would choose that one plan over another. And so you've really got to look at the big picture.
Well, we've come to the end of our time together, Danielle, but sure enough, you have explained many things, but I think the main story is it is complicated and it is individualized, and each individual should start thinking about this. I would say when you're 63, take a deep dive. So by the time that few months before 65 is rolling around, you have an idea of what you're going to do, and you have to check it again in case things have changed, which, as you can tell, do regularly. So I want to thank you so much, Danielle, for being our guest today, and people can find you at boomerbenefits.com. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, you can email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.